So if you're anywhere near marketing or advertising or really any kind of content creation, you have heard the AI hype.
Oh, it's unavoidable.
The articles, the demos, these huge, bold predictions. But I think we can say we are officially past the pilot program phase.
We really are. The what-if stage is over.
Right. AI isn't some future thing anymore. It's a current reality. It's embedded in the daily machinery of how things get made.
From briefs to the final assets to optimization, it's becoming the plumbing.
The plumbing, that's a perfect way to put it. And that's our mission today. We want to cut through the noise and really look at the operational reality of this shift. So we've done a deep dive into some really fascinating sources, pulling lessons from real-world agency work like for WPP-IQ to figure out what day-to-day AI actually looks like when it's running a high-volume professional engine.
We want the practical lessons.
The operational lessons, the shortcuts, and maybe some of the hard truths about what actually needs to change to make this work.
And if you're looking for sort of the one core insight to hang this whole discussion on, it's this.
Okay.
The true operational leverage of AI, the real power, it doesn't just come from making something faster.
That's the part everyone talks about, though.
It is. That's what the tech vendors sell you. But the real difficult but essential win that comes from tackling what we call the unglamorous constraints.
The unglamorous constraints. I love that. What do you mean by that specifically?
I mean things like brand consistency at scale, workflow governance, all the compliance checks, secure distribution.
All the boring stuff that actually makes a business run.
Exactly. When you make the creation part 10 times faster, all of those ignored internal friction points, they suddenly become the real barrier to getting anything done. If you can't solve for those, speed is worthless.
Okay, let's unpack that because that idea is really counterintuitive. The idea that AI's biggest value is in solving mundane problems.
Especially in a creative field, yeah.
Let's start right there with brand consistency, because that is the eternal, exhausting headache for any big global brand.
It is the absolute core challenge. Look, the problem is that generic off-the-shelf AI models, they produce generic off-brand work.
Right. They're trained on everything, not my thing.
Exactly. They were trained on the whole internet, not your specific brand's look and feel. So even with a perfect prompt, the output tends to drift.
It just feels a little off.
It feels off, and that creates endless back and forth correction cycles.
So I, as the brand manager, just spend my whole day fixing the supposedly instant output, which completely negates the point.
Precisely, and that's why the big operational shift we're seeing is that agencies are stopping to hope for accuracy and they're starting to engineer it.
So, okay, what does that mean, engineer it?
They're treating brand accuracy not as, a creative goal, but as a technical capability they have to build. And they do it through fine-tuning.
So fine-tuning. Can you break that down for us, for someone who isn't a data scientist?
Yeah, absolutely. So think of the base AI model like a highly skilled global translator.
Okay.
It knows every language, every style, every culture. But just generally, when you fine-tune it, you're taking that brilliant generalist and teaching it only the internal slang, the legal rules, the specific visual tone of your company.
You're making it a specialist.
You're making it a specialist, exactly. You train it on thousands of your pre-approved brand-specific assets, images, logos, fonts, successful campaigns. The model basically learns your brand's playbook inside and out.
And this is where it gets really actionable, because we have a great specific example from the sources, the WPP Argos case.
Yeah.
Argos is this huge retailer, and they're known for a really distinct 3D animation identity.
Right, which is super hard to replicate with a generic tool.
So what do they do?
Well, the fine-tuning they did there shows the depth you need to go to. It went way beyond just recognizing the main characters. The tailored model had to learn these crucial, subtle details.
Like what?
Like the specific lighting behavior and the really subtle shadowing that are just essential to the brand's whole visual identity.
That's fascinating, because lighting and shadows are usually the first things that look wrong with generic AI stuff. It looks flat, or the light source is all over the place.
It's the dead giveaway. And those details are so crucial operationally because that's the difference between an output being close enough and needing 3 rounds of human fixes
Versus being ready to go.
versus being ready for approval immediately. If the shadows are off, the asset gets rejected. Simple as that. By building those rules into the model, you guarantee every single asset starts like 95% of the way to compliant.
So the real payoff for the creative teams listening is, It's a tangible cost saving.
It is. And the human teams, their focus just completely shifts. They're not spending hours fixing bad lighting or checking for the wrong shade of blue. They move directly to making high-value creative decisions.
Strategic choices.
Strategic choices about the narrative, the cultural relevance, campaign optimization. You move from being a production janitor to a high-level creative steward.
Okay, that shift is huge.
Here.
So let's talk about the other side of this. Velocity,
Yeah.
speed. That's the headline everyone focuses on.
It always is.
We've seen sources talk about custom models producing images in minutes instead of months, especially for something like 3D animation, which is traditionally so slow. That's a revolutionary leap.
The acceleration is real, it's undeniable, but, and this is the critical operational lesson that so many leaders miss, speed doesn't eliminate constraints.
It just
moves them.
moves them where? Explain that.
Okay, think of it like this. You have this high-capacity pump, and it's pouring content into a narrow pipe, which is your old workflow. If your generation speed goes from 1 image a month to 1,000 images an hour, the downstream part of that pipe, the review section, it just explodes. The old hurdles become catastrophic bottlenecks.
So the new constraints are no longer about making the thing.
Not at all. The new constraints are review cycles, legal compliance, rights management, distribution. If your creative team can now generate 50 ad variations in an hour, but your legal team still needs a week for a manual review,
You haven't actually accelerated anything.
you've just created a huge traffic jam, a massive, unusable pile of assets.
So the real goal isn't just making stuff faster, it's rebuilding the entire downstream process to handle that new speed.
Correct. The agencies that are getting real measurable gains from this, they don't just bolt an AI tool onto an old process.
Because that breaks it.
It breaks it. They redesign the entire pipeline around that speed. They rethink every single handoff, every approval stage. It forces them to think more like software engineers designing an efficient data pipeline.
That structural redesign sounds hard. Let's talk about one of those friction points in the new pipeline, the interface itself. The sources point out a really surprising blocker to adoption is just usability.
Oh, it's...
If the tools feel clunky and disconnected, creative teams just waste all their time on manual stuff, handing things off, importing, exporting. That friction just kills momentum.
It's death by 1,000 clicks. I mean, imagine a designer. They need a slight variation on an asset. They have to go to a separate tool, type in all the parameters, generate it, download the massive file, upload it to the company's asset manager, then download it again to paste into their presentation.
And then they realize a new legal disclaimer wasn't in that other tool.
Exactly. You've lost all your efficiency right there. The interface becomes the whole battlefield. And the solution we're seeing is that organizations are building these brand-specific front ends
To hide the complexity.
to hide the complexity and to keep the teams inside one smooth, coherent workflow where nothing gets created outside the guardrails.
And we saw WPP Open cited as a big example of this platform approach. How does a system like that work?
So a platform like that acts as a central control layer. Instead of teams generating assets in a vacuum, the platform infuses the brand's proprietary knowledge and guardrails into the AI agents themselves.
So it's baked in from the start.
It's baked in, it supports the whole process planning, creation, delivery, and crucially, it ensures every new asset reinforces that central source of truth. It prevents that asset drift we were talking about because the constraints are active, built-in checks, not just guidelines in a PDF somewhere.
Speaking of guardrails, that brings us to governance. If AI is generating assets 24/7, governance can't live in a slide deck that nobody reads anymore.
No, that's just risk management theater at that point. Governance has to shift from being a static document to a dynamic, functional layer that is present at the exact moment of creation.
If you wait until the end to check for compliance.
You're too late. You've already created the risk.
So what does that look like? A functional, dynamic governance strategy for generative AI.
The most effective strategy we're seeing is the use of secure experimentation environments. People often call them walled gardens. Okay.
And these are critical. They're secure, firewalled spaces where teams can prototype new AI solutions, test them against brand rules, test them against regulations, but without exposing any sensitive client data or unvetted results to the outside world.
So you can play around safely.
You can innovate safely. The governance team essentially controls the door. Only the models and workflows that pass all the tests for risk and compliance get promoted into the live production systems, is how you keep momentum without taking on massive risk.
Speed and safety. Got it. Now, let's zoom out to the The really seismic shift here, the one in the agency-client relationship itself.
Hmm.
If these tools are becoming client-facing, if clients can start using self-serve tools to generate their own variations, what is the agency selling anymore?
It absolutely forces an upward shift in the value chain. If a client can generate 50 banner ads themselves for the price of a subscription, the agency can't win by being the one who makes the banner ads.
That model is dead. That model is dead. Agencies have to win by owning what's much harder to self-serve. Their value moves from the commodity of making everything to the intellectual property of designing the machine that makes things safely and consistently.
So they're building the factory, not just working on the assembly line.
That's a great way to put it. They build and maintain those complex, fine-tuned models. They engineer the governance. They embed the guardrails so the client can operate safely on their own. The agency becomes the architect of the client's automated production system.
And this isn't just about making content, is it? We're also seeing this massive compression in the traditionally slow work of strategy and planning.
A huge compression. Strategy used to take weeks, right? Deep research, focus groups, competitive audits.
Where does all that time go now?
It goes into instant, iterative insight. We can look at the Publicis Sapient example. They're using AI-driven planning that combines language models with huge knowledge bases and prompt libraries. So instead of a strategist spending 2 weeks manually pulling reports,
The machine does it in minutes.
the machine synthesizes all of it rapidly. It converts those long research cycles into rapid insight that the human team can act on immediately. Planning becomes less about exhaustive research and more about optimal planning at speed.
It's huge. If research and production time compress like that, the human job has to change dramatically.
It has to. Less time is spent on the repetitive stuff. Drafting basic copy, resizing images for 12 different platforms, all that versioning.
And more time on what?
More time is focused on the higher-order tasks that require human judgment. Brand stewardship, narrative shaping, managing cultural alignment, complex decision-making. The human creative is forced up the value chain to focus only on what the machine can't do.
It also means you need totally new roles inside these agencies, right? You can't run this software-driven supply chain with just creative directors.
No, absolutely not. The agencies that are getting this right are hiring for new operational roles. You need specialists in model training, the people who make sure the Argos model shadows are correct. You need workflow designers. And, critically, you need dedicated AI governance leaders. The agency starts to look a lot more like a software engineering firm.
Which brings us right back to our main theme. AI is transforming marketing agencies into operations that function more like, well, like software-driven supply chains.
Standardize where it helps, flexible where it matters.
And measurable, auditable, end-to-end. You're engineering creative outcomes, not just hoping for them.
That's the key takeaway right there. If you're listening to this and you're running a marketing operation, you need to recognize that your main output is quickly becoming the system that produces the content, not just the content itself. You're selling efficiency and safety at scale.
Which leads us to a final, pretty provocative thought for you to consider.
So, if the successful agency's primary output is now the production system, does that mean the next generation of top creative directors, the leaders who define a brand's integrity, will need to stop thinking just like storytellers?
And start thinking more like supply chain managers and software engineers.
Exactly.
Something profound to mull over as you design your own fine-tuned brand playbook. That has been our deep dive into the operational transformation of modern marketing. See you next time.